It was a bright, sunny Monday morning at Westview Middle School. The sun shone through the big windows, making everything look happy and warm. Kids filled the hallways, running around like busy bees. They laughed loud, talked fast, and slammed their lockers with big bangs. The noise bounced off the walls, making the whole place feel alive and wild. Into this loud, crazy world walked Jake Carter. He was the new kid, and he didn't look like much at first. Jake was quiet, super quiet. He didn't shout or yell like the others. He was skinny too, not big or strong looking. And he always kept his head down, staring at the floor like he didn't want anyone to see his face. Most kids didn't even notice him. They were too busy with their friends, their games, and their fun. Jake just slipped through the crowd like a shadow, unnoticed and alone. But not everyone missed him. Oh no, the bullies saw him right away. They were like sharks swimming in the ocean, sniffing for something weak to chase, and to them Jake looked like an easy catch. He wasn't loud or tough looking. He didn't have a big group of friends to back him up. He was just there, alone, quiet, perfect for them to pick on. They grinned at each other, already planning their mean games. They didn't know it yet, but they were about to make a huge mistake. A really, really big one. Jake wasn't like the other kids, even if he looked that way. He carried an old backpack, all scratched up and torn at the edges. It wasn't shiny or new like the ones some kids had. It looked like it had been through a lot, maybe even more than Jake himself. His sneakers were old too. The soles were worn out and the laces were frayed, like they might snap any second. Kids at Westview loved showing off their cool stuff, new shoes, fancy bags, bright jackets. But Jake, he didn't have any of that. He didn't seem to care either. He just walked along, hands in his pockets, keeping to himself. To everyone else, he was a nobody, just another kid who didn't matter. Someone who didn't fit in with the loud, happy crowd. But here's the thing, Jake wasn't what he seemed, not even close. No one knew the real Jake, not the teachers, not the other kids, not even the bullies who were already watching him like hungry wolves. He had a secret, a big one, a secret so cool and surprising that it would change everything. But right now no one had a clue, not yet. He was like a mystery waiting to pop open, and oh boy, was it going to be wild when it did. Let's picture that Monday morning a little more. The bell hadn't rung yet, so the hallways were packed. Kids ran from one end to the other, shouting about their weekends. Some were kicking a ball against the wall. Others were trading snacks or showing off new games on their phones. The air smelled like pencil shavings and cafeteria food, maybe pizza or chicken nuggets. It was a normal day at Westview, loud and messy and full of energy. Jake stepped into all this like he was walking into a storm. He didn't look scared though, he didn't look excited either. He just walked, slow and steady, like he had all the time in the world. His first class was math, way down at the end of the hall. He had to weave through the crowd to get there. Kids bumped into him, but he didn't say anything. One girl dropped her books and Jake stopped to pick them up for her. She said, "Thanks," quick and quiet, then ran off. Jake didn't smile or wave. He just nodded and kept going. That's how he was, quiet, simple, not making a fuss. If you saw him, you'd think he was boring, just a plain kid with nothing special about him. But that's what made the bullies notice him even more. To them, quiet meant weak. Alone meant easy. They didn't like kids who stood out. They liked kids they could push around. And Jake, he looked like the perfect target. Now let's talk about those bullies for a second. They weren't just any kids. They were the kind who thought they owned the school. They walked around like they were the bosses of everything. If you had something they wanted, like a cool toy or a good snack, they'd take it. If you tried to say no, they'd laugh in your face. And if you were new, oh, they loved that. New kids didn't know the rules yet. New kids didn't have friends to help them. New kids were fresh meat, and the bullies couldn't wait to dig in. Now, Jake didn't know it yet, but he just stepped into their world, and they were ready to make his life miserable. Imagine being Jake for a minute. You're new, you don't know anyone. The school is big and loud, and everyone's staring at you or worse, ignoring you. Your backpack's old, your shoes are falling apart, and you don't have anything cool to show off. How would you feel? Scared, nervous, maybe a little mad? Jake didn't show any of that. He didn't cry or run away. He didn't even look upset. He just kept walking, like none of it bothered him. That's what made him so interesting. Most kids would freak out on their first day. Most kids would try to fit in or hide. But Jake, he didn't seem to care, and that's what the bullies hated most. They wanted him to be scared. They wanted him to react. But he didn't, not yet. The morning went on and Jake made it to math class. He sat in the back, away from everyone. The teacher, Mrs. Harper, was nice but busy. She didn't notice Jake much either. She was too focused on writing numbers on the board and telling kids to hush. Jake opened his notebook, a plain one with a ripped cover, and started writing. He didn't raise his hand. He didn't ask questions. He just did his work, quiet as a mouse. The other kids whispered and giggled, passing notes or doodling. Jake didn't join in. He was in his own little world, and no one bothered to pull him out. Outside, the sun climbed higher in the sky. Recess was coming soon, and that's when things would really start. Recess was the bullies' favorite time. No teachers watching too close. No rules to stop them. Just a big playground where they could do whatever they wanted. Jake didn't know it, but recess was going to be the moment everything changed. The bullies were already whispering about him. They'd seen him in the hall. They'd watched him in class. They decided he was their next target. And they couldn't wait to show him who was boss. But here's the fun part. Jake wasn't just some helpless kid. Nope. He had something up his sleeve, something big, something that would make those bullies wish they'd never even looked at him. What do you think makes someone a target for bullies? Is it how they look, how they act, or maybe just bad luck? Think about it, because Jake's story is about to get crazy. He might look small and quiet now, but looks can trick you. And the bullies, they were about to learn that the hard way. So stick around, this is just the start. Jake's first day at Westview Middle School was going to be one nobody would forget. Not the kids, not the teachers, and definitely not the bullies. What do you think Jake's secret could be? Something cool, something surprising, something that'll make your jaw drop. Keep watching, because this story about to get wild. It was lunchtime at Westview Middle School, and the cafeteria was buzzing like a beehive. The kids were everywhere, grabbing trays, spilling juice, and shouting over each other. The smell of fries and pizza floated through the air. Into this noisy mess walked Tommy Tank Wilson. Tank was the biggest bully in 6th grade, and not just because he was tall and wide. He loved picking on anyone smaller than him, and guess what? That was pretty much every kid in school. Tank wasn't alone either. He had two buddies, Mike and Logan, who followed him around like puppies. Now together, they acted like they owned the place. Kids moved out of their way. Teachers sighed when they saw them coming. Tank ruled the school like a king, and he loved every second of it. Then Tank's eyes landed on Jake Carter, the new kid. Jake was shuffling through the cafeteria, holding his tray with both hands. His beat-up backpack hung off one shoulder and his old sneakers squeaked on the floor. He looked small and quiet, just trying to find a place to sit. To Tank, that was like waving a red flag. He grinned big, like it was Christmas morning and Jake was a present waiting to be unwrapped. Tank nudged Mike and Logan, pointing at Jake with a mean little laugh. Check out the new kid, he said. Time for some fun. Tank waited until Jake was close enough for everyone to hear. Then he yelled, "Hey, new kid." His voice boomed across the room, loud and rough. Kids stopped talking, heads turned. Everyone knew something was about to happen. Tank stood up tall, crossing his arms like he was the boss. "What's with the junk shoes?" he shouted. "You too poor to get new ones." He laughed, and it wasn't a nice laugh. It was sharp and mean, like a poke with a stick. Mike and Logan laughed too, copying Tank like always. Some other kids snickered, hiding their smiles behind their hands. They didn't want to miss the show. Then Tank grabbed a fry from his tray. It was greasy and floppy. He flicked his wrist and tossed it right at Jake's head. The fry sailed through the air and smacked Jake on the forehead with a little splat. A few kids gasped. Others giggled louder. Everyone waited to see what Jake would do. Would he cry? Would he run? Would he yell back? But Jake didn't do any of those things. He didn't even flinch. He just stopped walking, looked down at the fry that fell onto his tray, and picked it up with 2 fingers. Then he dropped it like it was nothing and kept moving. He didn't say a word. He didn't look at Tank. He just walked on, calm as could be. Tank's grin faded fast. His eyes got small and squinty like he was mad, really mad. "Oh, you're gonna regret ignoring me," he muttered under his breath. Mike and Logan heard him and nodded, ready for whatever Tank wanted to do next. To them, Jake wasn't just the new kid anymore, he was a challenge. Tank didn't like being ignored. He liked it when kids got scared or mad. He liked it when they reacted. But Jake didn't give him anything. No tears, no shouting, no nothing. That made Tank's blood boil. He wasn't done with Jake, not even close. Jake found a table in the corner and sat down alone. He opened his lunch, a plain sandwich and an apple, and started eating. He didn't look around. He didn't check if anyone was watching, but he wasn't dumb. Inside, he was paying attention. He saw Tank's red face. He heard the whispers from the other kids. He knew something was up. Jake stayed calm on the outside, like a still pond, but inside, he was watching, waiting. Something about him felt different. He wasn't shaking or hiding like most kids would. He wasn't scared. He was just there, quiet, steady, like he knew something no one else did. The cafeteria went back to normal after a bit. Kids started talking again, grabbing their food and laughing about other stuff. But Tank didn't let it go. He sat with Mike and Logan, poking at his fries and glaring at Jake from across the room. "Who does he think he is?" Tank grumbled. "Walking away like that, like I'm nobody." Mike shrugged and said, "He's weird, man." Logan nodded and added, "Yeah, let's get him later." Tank smirked, already thinking about what he'd do next. He wasn't going to let Jake off easy. No way. Bullies like Tank didn't stop until they got what they wanted: fear, tears, or a fight. And Jake ignoring him, that just made Tank want to push harder. Think about it for a second. What would you do if someone tried to embarrass you like that? Imagine you're Jake, standing there with a fry on your tray and everyone staring. Would you yell back? Would you run away? Maybe you'd laugh it off or tell a teacher. Most kids would do something, but Jake didn't. He stayed cool, like it didn't even matter. That's what made him so strange and so interesting. Tank thought he'd found an easy target, but maybe he was wrong. Maybe Jake wasn't as weak as he looked. What do you think? Could Jake have a trick up his sleeve? Let's keep going and find out. The rest of lunch passed and the bell rang. Kids grabbed their trays and ran off to class or recess. Jake finished his apple, packed up his stuff, and left the cafeteria alone. Tank watched him go, his hands balled into fists. He didn't say anything out loud, but his face said it all. He was mad and he was planning. Mike and Logan stuck close, ready to follow Tank's lead. They didn't know what he'd do next, but they knew it'd be big. Tank wasn't the kind of kid who let things slide. He'd find Jake again. He'd make sure Jake paid for walking away like that. Jake didn't seem worried, though. He moved through the halls, still quiet, still calm. Kids bumped into him, but he didn't care. He kept his head down, his old sneakers squeaking along. If you saw him, you'd think he was just another kid, small, shy, easy to pick on. But there was something about him, something you couldn't quite see yet. Tank thought he had Jake all figured out. He thought Jake was weak. He thought Jake was scared inside, even if he didn't show it. But what if Tank was wrong? What if Jake was hiding something big? Let's see what happens next, because this story about to heat up. The next few days at Westview Middle School were tough for Jake Carter, the new kid. Things didn't get better, they got worse, way worse. Tank Wilson and his two buddies, Mike and Logan, wouldn't leave Jake alone. They were like shadows, following him everywhere he went. In the halls, they stuck out their feet and tripped him. Jake would stumble, his old sneakers sliding on the shiny floor, but he never fell hard. He'd just get up, grab his beat-up backpack, and keep walking. The bullies didn't stop there. They'd sneak up when Jake wasn't looking and dump his books in the trash. Papers and pencils would spill out, and kids passing by would giggle or point. Tank loved that part. He'd laugh the loudest, watching Jake pick his stuff out of the garbage without saying a word. It kept going. At recess, when the sun was high and everyone was playing, Tank and his crew found new ways to be mean. One day, they accidentally splashed Jake with water from a bottle. The water soaked his shirt and dripped down his face. "Oops," Mike said, pretending it was a mistake. Logan snickered and Tank just grinned, big and nasty. Kids nearby watched, some laughing, some looking away. Jake wiped the water off his face with his sleeve and kept standing there, quiet as ever. He didn't yell or run to a teacher. He didn't even look mad. That made Tank madder. He wanted Jake to cry or fight. He wanted something, but Jake gave him nothing. One afternoon, things got even meaner. Tank cornered Jake in the hall right by the lockers. The bell had just rung and kids were rushing to class. Tank stepped in front of Jake, blocking his way. He was big, way bigger than Jake, and he used that to scare people. "You're nothing, new kid," Tank sneered, his voice loud and sharp. Then he shoved Jake hard against a locker. The metal clanged and Jake's backpack slid off his shoulder. A few kids stopped to watch, laughing nervously. They didn't know what would happen next. Would Jake finally snap? Would he run? But Jake didn't do either. He just stood there, his back against the cold locker, and looked at Tank. His eyes were steady and quiet, not scared, not angry, just calm. Tank blinked, surprised, then shoved him again. "What's wrong with you?" he growled. Jake didn't answer. He picked up his bag and walked away, leaving Tank fuming. The kids started whispering after that. "Why doesn't he fight back?" one girl asked her friend. He's weird, a boy said, shaking his head. They didn't get it. Jake wasn't loud or tough looking. He didn't shout or push back like other kids might, but something about him was different. He didn't act like he was weak, even when Tank treated him like trash. He acted like he didn't care or like he knew something they didn't. Tank hated that. Every time Jake walked away, it made Tank want to try harder. He wasn't done picking on the new kid, not yet. Then later that week, something odd happened. It was gym class and the coach blew his whistle loud. "Time to run laps," he shouted. All the kids groaned, but they lined up on the field anyway. The grass was green and the air smelled like dirt and sweat. The coach pointed to a big circle marked with cones. "5 laps around," he said. "Go." The kids started running or jogging really. Some walked when the coach wasn't looking. Tank was near the front at first, his big legs stomping the ground. But after 1 lap, he slowed down. His face got red and he huffed and puffed like an old train. Mike and Logan weren't much better. They dragged their feet, breathing hard, barely keeping up. Then there was Jake, skinny, quiet Jake, with his old sneakers and messy hair. He started running and whoosh, he zoomed past everyone like it was nothing. His feet flew over the grass fast and smooth. He didn't even look tired. 1 lap, 2 laps, 3, he kept going, passing kids left and right. Tank was still huffing halfway around when Jake finished all 5. He stopped by the coach, hands in his pockets, breathing easy. The other kids stared. "Whoa, he's fast," a boy whispered. "Did you see that?" A girl said, her eyes wide. Even the coach raised an eyebrow, surprised. Jake didn't say anything. He just stood there, watching the others stumble in. Tank heard the whispers and his face got redder, not just from running. He glared at Jake from across the field. "Lucky run," he growled, loud enough for his buddies to hear. "That's all it was." Mike nodded fast. "Yeah, just luck," he said. Logan wiped sweat off his forehead and mumbled, "He's not that good." But they didn't sound so sure. Jake didn't argue or brag. He didn't even look at Tank. He just turned away, and if you looked close you might have seen it, a tiny smirk on his face. A little smile, like he knew something funny, something secret. It was gone in a second, but it was there. And it made you wonder, was Tank right? Was it just luck? Or was there more to Jake than anyone thought? The rest of gym class went on, with kids kicking balls and climbing ropes. Jake stayed quiet, doing what the coach said, not making a fuss, but those whispers didn't stop. Kids kept talking about the run. "He's so skinny, how's he so fast?" one boy asked. "Maybe he's not as weak as he looks," a girl said. Tank pretended not to hear, but he did. And it bugged him. He didn't like Jake getting attention. He didn't like that smirk. He didn't like anything about this new kid who wouldn't break. Tank kicked the grass and muttered to Mike, "We'll get him tomorrow." Mike grinned. "Yeah, he won't be smirking then." Logan laughed, and the 3 of them started planning again. Jake didn't seem to notice, or maybe he did. Maybe he heard every word, maybe he saw every glare. He didn't show it, though. He kept his head down, his hands in his pockets, his old sneakers squeaking along. He looked small, he looked weak. But that run, that smirk, they were clues, little hints that Jake wasn't just some nobody. Could this skinny kid have a secret, something big, something that would turn everything upside down? You'll have to keep watching, because what's coming next is wild. Tank thinks he's in charge, but he might be wrong. Really, really wrong. Let's find out together. Friday finally came at Westview Middle School. It had been a long week, and Tank Wilson was done waiting. He was tired of Jake Carter, the new kid, acting like he didn't care. Tank wanted to win. He wanted Jake to be scared. He wanted everyone to see who was boss. So after lunch, he pulled Mike and Logan close and whispered, "Time to teach this loser a lesson." His voice was low and mean, like a growl. Mike nodded fast, his eyes big. Logan grinned, cracking his knuckles like he'd seen in movies. They had a plan and they couldn't wait to use it. The bell rang at the end of the day and kids poured out of the school. Most ran to buses or bikes, laughing and shouting. But Tank, Mike, and Logan didn't go home. They waited, they watched, they saw Jake walking out alone, his beat-up backpack swinging on one shoulder. His old sneakers squeaked on the pavement. He didn't look around. He didn't know what was coming. Tank pointed and said, "There he is, let's go." The three of them moved quick, like sneaky cats, and followed Jake behind the school. It was a quiet spot, no teachers, no other kids, no one to see. Just a patch of grass and some bushes next to the big brick wall. Perfect for Tank's plan. They cornered Jake fast. Tank stepped in front, big and tall, blocking Jake's way. Mike stood on one side, Logan on the other. Jake stopped walking and looked up. His face was calm, like always. That made Tank mad. "You think you're tough, new kid," Tank said, his voice loud and rough. He cracked his knuckles, making a loud pop-pop sound. Mike laughed, short and nervous. Logan bounced on his toes, ready to jump in. Jake didn't say anything. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, watching them with those steady, quiet eyes. Tank hated those eyes. He hated that Jake didn't look scared. "You're gonna learn today," Tank said, and then he swung his fist, big and mighty, right at Jake's face. But then bam, everything changed in a flash. Jake moved so fast it was like magic. He ducked under Tank's punch, bending low like a cat dodging a broom. Tank's fist hit nothing but air and he stumbled forward, surprised. Before he could figure out what happened, Jake grabbed Tank's arm, the one still swinging, and twisted it hard behind Tank's back. Tank yelped, loud and high, like a little puppy that stepped on a thorn. His face went red and his knees buckled. He couldn't move. Jake held him tight, not letting go. Mike and Logan froze for a second, their mouths open. They didn't know what to do. Then Mike yelled, "Get him," and ran at Jake, arms out like he'd tackle him. But Jake was too quick. He let go of Tank, spun around, and kicked Mike's legs right out from under him. Mike's feet flew up and he crashed to the ground with a big thud. He groaned, rolling on the grass, holding his knees. Logan tried next, swinging a wild punch at Jake's head. But Jake dodged it easy, stepping to the side like he knew it was coming. Logan tripped over his own feet and fell flat, landing next to Mike with a loud oof. In 10 seconds, just 10, all three bullies were on the ground. Tank was clutching his twisted arm, his face scrunched up in pain. Mike was rubbing his legs, whining like a baby. Logan was sprawled out, breathing hard, staring at the sky. Grass stuck to their clothes and dirt smudged their faces. They looked messy and beat. Jake stood over them, tall and steady. He wasn't even breathing hard. His shirt wasn't torn. His sneakers were still on tight. He looked like he'd just taken a walk, not fought three big kids. Tank looked up, his eyes wide and shaky. Who are you?" he gasped, his voice all wobbly. He couldn't believe it. Neither could Mike or Logan. They stared at Jake like he was a ghost or a superhero. The quiet new kid, the one they'd tripped and splashed and shoved, was standing there totally fine while they were a mess on the ground. Jake tilted his head a little like he was thinking. Then he spoke, clear and calm. "I'm Jake Carter," he said, "and I've been training in MMA since I was 5. The bullies' jaws dropped. Their mouths hung open like fish out of water. MMA, mixed martial arts. That's the stuff you see on TV, kicks, punches, flips, all the cool moves. And Jake had been doing it since he was 5. That's little kid age. Tank blinked, his brain spinning. Mike sat up slow, still rubbing his legs. Logan pushed himself onto his elbows, staring at Jake like he'd never seen him before. This skinny kid, the one with the junk shoes and old backpack, was a champ, a real fighter. "No way." Jake didn't yell or brag. He didn't laugh at them or call them names. He just stood there looking down at the bullies with those same quiet eyes. The wind blew a little, rustling the bushes, but Jake didn't move. He didn't need to. He'd already won. Tank tried to say something, but his words got stuck. You, he mumbled, then gave up. He'd never been beat like that. Never. And by the new kid, the one he called nothing. It didn't make sense. Think about it. All week Tank and his crew thought Jake was weak. They laughed at his shoes, threw fries at him, pushed him around. They thought he was an easy target. But now they were the ones on the ground, hurting and confused. Jake wasn't just fast from gym class. He wasn't just lucky. He was tough, really tough. He'd been hiding it all along, waiting for the right moment. And this was it, the big reveal. The moment everyone found out who Jake really was. The air felt different now. Quiet, heavy. Tank and his buddies didn't jump up or try again. They just sat there looking small for once. Jake turned away, picking up his backpack from where it fell. He slung it over his shoulder and started walking back toward the school. His steps were slow and easy, like nothing big had happened, but it had, something huge. The bullies didn't follow him. They didn't dare. They learned their lesson the hard way. What a twist, right? The new kid wasn't a nobody. He was a champ. Told you this was gonna get crazy. Jake didn't need to shout or show off all week. He just waited. And when Tank tried to punch him, Jake showed them all what he could do. Now the bullies knew, and soon everyone else would too. Stick around, because this story's not over yet. After that wild Friday behind the school, everything changed fast. Word spread like wildfire through Westview Middle School. It was like someone lit a match, and the news burned through the halls quicker than you could blink. By Monday morning, every kid knew the truth about Jake Carter. He wasn't just the new kid anymore. Nope, he was a total badass. Everyone was talking about it, whispering in class, shouting at recess, even telling their parents at home. "Did you hear about Jake?" kids said. "He beat up Tank and his buddies." The story grew bigger every time someone told it, but the main part stayed the same. Jake wasn't weak. He was tough, really tough. Monday came and the school felt different. The sun was out, the birds were chirping, but the air buzzed with excitement. Kids crowded in the halls before the bell, staring at Jake as he walked in. His old sneakers squeaked like always, and his beat-up backpack hung off one shoulder. He looked the same, skinny, quiet, head down a little, but now everyone saw him in a new way. They knew what he did. They knew he'd taken down Tank, Mike, and Logan all by himself. No one could believe it at first, but the proof was right there. Tank and his crew weren't laughing anymore. Speaking of Tank, he didn't look so big now. He slunk around the school like a scared dog, keeping his head low. Mike and Logan stuck close to him, but they weren't loud or mean anymore. They avoided Jake like he was a ghost. If Jake walked down one hall, they'd turn and go the other way. If he sat in the cafeteria, they picked a table far, far away. They didn't talk about him. They didn't even look at him. It was like they were afraid he'd zap them with superpowers or something. Tank's arm still hurt from when Jake twisted it, and he rubbed it sometimes, wincing like it was a reminder. They weren't the kings of the school anymore. Jake had knocked them down, and they didn't know how to get back up. The principal heard about the fight, too. You can't keep something that big a secret, not with kids talking nonstop. By Monday afternoon, Tank, Mike, and Logan got called to the office. The principal, Mrs. Grayson, was a tall lady with glasses and a serious face. She didn't yell, but she didn't smile either. She sat them down and asked what happened. The bullies tried to lie at first. We didn't do anything, Tank mumbled. He started it, Mike said, pointing at no one. Logan just nodded, looking at the floor, but too many kids saw them corner Jake behind the school. Too many heard Tank say mean things all week. The truth came out fast. Mrs. Grayson didn't let it slide. She gave Tank and his crew detention for weeks. Weeks that meant staying after school every day, sitting in a quiet room with no fun. No recess, no games, just boring worksheets and a grumpy teacher watching them. The bullies groaned when they heard, but they couldn't argue. They'd been caught, and Jake, he didn't get in trouble at all. Mrs. Grayson called him to the office too, but only to check if he was okay. You did what you had to, she said, her voice soft. But no more fighting, all right, Jake nodded, quiet as ever, and left. He didn't tell her he was an MMA champ. He didn't need to. The school already knew. The kids changed how they acted around Jake after that. The ones who'd laughed at him before when Tank threw fries or dumped his books stopped giggling now. They felt silly for picking on him. Some even said sorry, mumbling it quick in the halls. Didn't mean it, one boy said, kicking the floor. You're cool, a girl added, smiling shyly. Jake didn't say much back. He'd just nod or shrug like it was no big deal. But then something awesome happened. Kids started high-fiving him. In the halls at lunch, even during class changes, they'd stick out their hands and smack his palm. Nice job, Jake, they'd say. You're the best. Jake didn't grin big or cheer, but his eyes got a little brighter. He liked that they weren't mean anymore. Jake went back to being himself after that, quiet old Jake. He didn't talk loud or show off. He didn't tell everyone he was an MMA champ every 5 minutes. He didn't need to. Everyone already knew, and that was enough. He'd sit in class, do his work, and eat his plain lunch alone. But now no one messed with him, not a single kid. The bullies were too scared, and the other kids were too impressed. If someone bumped into him by accident, they'd say, "Oops, sorry, Jake," real fast. No one wanted to make him mad, not that Jake ever got mad. He was still calm, still steady, just like before. Only now he had respect. Tank learned his lesson the hard way. Picking on the wrong kid can leave you flat on your back, literally. He thought Jake was weak because he was quiet and small. He thought Jake's old shoes and torn backpack meant he was a nobody. But Tank was so wrong. Jake wasn't a nobody. He was strong, fast, and smart. He'd been training in MMA since he was 5, and that made him tougher than Tank could ever dream of being. When Tank swung that punch on Friday, he thought he'd win easy. Instead, he ended up on the ground, yelping and confused. Now he knew looks can trick you, and picking on someone you don't really know, that's a bad idea. How satisfying is that? Think about it. All week, Tank and his crew were mean, tripping Jake, splashing him, shoving him around. They laughed and thought they were so cool. But in the end, Jake turned it all around. He didn't cry or run away. He didn't even need to try hard. He just waited, then bam, he showed them who he really was. Now Tank's the one hiding and Jake's the one everyone likes. It's like a superhero story, but real. The bad guys lost and the good guy won, all because he stayed calm and strong. By the end of Monday, the school settled down a little. Kids still talked about Jake, but the whispers got quieter. Life went back to normal almost. Tank and his buddies served their detention, grumbling every day. Jake kept being Jake, walking through the halls with his head down, hands in his pockets. But something stayed different. No one forgot what happened. No one forgot that the quiet new kid was a champ. And no one, especially not Tank, would mess with him again. Justice was served, and it felt good. And there you have it, friends. Jake's story is done, and wow, what a ride it was. From the new kid with old sneakers to the champ who took down the bullies, Jake showed us something big. His story proves one super cool thing: you never know who you're dealing with. That's right, people can look one way on the outside, but inside, they might be hiding something amazing. Jake was quiet, he was skinny, he didn't talk much or show off. Everyone ignored him, or worse, picked on him. But guess what? He wasn't weak, he wasn't scared, he was strong, stronger than anyone thought. And when the time was right, he surprised them all. Think about that for a second. The quiet ones, the ones everyone forgets about, they might just be the ones who shock you. Jake didn't need to yell or fight every day to prove he was tough. He waited, he stayed calm, and then bam, he showed the bullies who he really was. That's pretty awesome, right? It's like a secret superpower. You don't always see it coming, but when it shows up, it changes everything. So maybe the kid who sits alone at lunch isn't just shy. Maybe the one who doesn't talk much isn't boring. Maybe they're waiting for their big moment, just like Jake. Here's something to chew on. Next time you see someone getting picked on, maybe think twice. Don't just laugh or walk away. That person could be an underdog, a quiet hero waiting to shine. Bullies like Tank thought they could push Jake around because he didn't fight back at first. They thought he was nothing, but he wasn't nothing. He was a champ, and when he finally stood up, he didn't just win, he made everyone see him in a new way. That's what underdogs do. They surprise you. They turn things around. They show the world that being quiet doesn't mean being weak. What if we all looked at people a little closer? What if we didn't judge them by their old shoes or their small size? Jake's story makes you wonder, maybe there are champs all around us, hiding in plain sight. Maybe the next time you see someone who looks different or acts quiet, you'll think, hey, they could be awesome, because they could, they really could. And wouldn't it be cool to be the one who cheers them on instead of laughing at them? Jake didn't need everyone's help to win, but imagine how he felt when kids started high-fiving him. Being kind can make someone's day, even a champ's day, way better. So what did you think of Jake's big moment? That part where he flipped Tank and his crew flat on their backs, wasn't it wild? I bet your heart was beating fast when he said, "I've been training in MMA since I was 5. Who saw that coming? Not me, not Tank, not anyone. It was the best surprise ever. Tell me what you thought in the comments below. Did it make you cheer? Did it make you jump up and say, yes? I want to know. Oh, and while you're at it, tell me where you're watching from today. Are you at home, at school, somewhere super cool? Let's share. If this story got your heart pumping, and I bet it did, smash that like button hard. It's like giving Jake a big high five through the screen. And if you love epic tales like this, hit that subscribe button too. There's more where this came from, more surprises, more champs, more fun. I'll be back with another story soon and you won't want to miss it. Stories like Jake's make us feel strong and happy. They remind us that anyone can be a hero, even the quiet ones. So let's take something from Jake today. Be brave, be kind, and don't judge people too fast. You never know who's got a secret waiting to shine. See you in the next one, friends. Keep being awesome.